Увага. Відбій повітряної тривоги.
Music from Ukraine, and Joseph Lindsley joins us from Ukraine right now to tell us about the significance of this song and the lyrics. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Bob. Good afternoon from the Carpathian Mountains. This is a song by two Ukrainian DJs, Topolsky and Arestovich, and those words you heard at the beginning are the actual words from the all-clear alarm that you would hear in the western parts of Ukraine, in Lviv, Vibiye Trevohe, which literally means the anxiety is relieved. And so that's how you would say all clear in the very poetic Ukrainian language. But those words, people really feel deeply when you hear that all clear alarm. And then this song, these DJs take that sound that everyone hears so often here, and then it's just a very calm tune. And then they say these words, "Vse bude dobre," everything will be okay, all will be well. And that song sort of shows you we have these moments of relief, of stress. The work doesn't stop, because victory is not had yet. But there are moments of pause, as I've seen here in my time here in the mountains. Moments to step back and to get new energy, and even soldiers from the front lines, take moments to step back and to recharge. And that's as this it's. I've seen, for example, the past several days here, I've been privileged to meet with people from all over the country, volunteering in different ways. I also met a lot of people from the Crimean peninsula, mainly young people who they haven't seen their homeland since 2014, when Russia invaded it after Ukraine's Revolution of Dignity. And one girl named Saifi, she was telling me, she was cooking us food from her grandmother's recipes, and her grandmother is still there behind the Russian lines. Because she didn't want to give up their family home in the Crimean Peninsula. She gave it up in 1944, when she was very young. The Crimean Tatar people were forced to leave their peninsular home, and so the grandmother said, "Not this time." And so, for 9 years now, the family's been separated. Occasionally they could visit, but definitely not now, not since Russia's full-scale invasion. And here in this, talking with these people here in the mountains. All together, you had the Boyko people, who are very Christian people of the mountains with their traditions, and then you have the Muslim Tatar people, and they're united in the sense of being Ukrainian, which is sort of, as everyone was telling me, that this is the land of free people, even if their cultures are distinct. But the abiding culture is a sense of freedom, and so that's so I was thinking of that song because even though there's surely difficult days ahead. This idea that there's relief in the anxiety, and everything will be well as people keep working together.
I don't know how you do it. I really don't. A couple of questions from listeners came in on the text line and via email. Let me get to those right now. This is from Madeline. I really enjoyed Joseph's reporting. However, I found his recent comments confusing when he stated that of the 100 billion the U.S. has contributed to Ukraine, 60% of that stays in the United States with American defense contractors. Could he explain that?
Yes, exactly. So, as with most cases with bills passed in Washington, there's some of the money in the bill is actually a valuation of things that Washington is giving away, and so that's what we see with a lot of these. For example, the HIMARS, the high mobility rocket launching systems that have been they've made such a huge difference here in Ukraine. That was old stuff that Washington has had for a long time. And so they weren't buying new weapons, but it still gets put in the spending package. It gets valued. And so we get a value of the whole package. But then when we look at that 60%, it took me a long time to find that statistic. That was one of the hardest things to find for many months up until this past February. And it's sort of the norm with Washington. We've always heard the stories about, and now there's, I think, new stories about this the past couple of days in the States, but, the famous stories of the toilet seat for the Pentagon that cost, $10,000, because clearly they're trying to purchase other things. And so part of that's because of secrecy, but part of that is just the normal Washington procedures. But finally, the chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee, a Republican from Texas, Michael McCall, confirmed in February that out of more than $100 billion in the aid packages for Ukraine, Only 20 billion, which only that's a lot. 20 billion came directly to Ukraine to help fund the government and military and humanitarian operations. But out of that total of 100 billion, only about 15% was military expenditures, which would include, again, the valuation of older equipment. Another 15% is humanitarian projects, including USAID. That stuff is very hard to figure out where that money is going. This is still an ongoing process. And then I think probably one of the largest chunks of that 60% and when I say stays in America, I mean does not come to Ukraine, is for United States to purchase new weapons for the American military. Now, these are weapons that were going purchased anyway, as the United States is always developing and trying to keep its military, at the peak of fitness. But because of the war now, Russia's war in Ukraine, that spending gets put into Ukraine spending packages. And so we have to just, it doesn't mean that, there has been a lot of money spent here, but it's not as much as it seems. And actually, a lot of that money would have been spent even if there was no war now, as the United States is always improving its military equipment.
It would have been spent anyway. Interesting.
Yes.
Here's one that you may not remember this because I don't remember what happened yesterday, but this listener says, please ask Bob to ask Joseph for the name of the book about Ukraine. When he was talking with Joseph on May 18th, the author was also mentioned a couple of times by Joe. Thank you, Maureen. Do you remember the book? Was that the Timothy Snyder book?
I'm thinking this must be Timothy. Yes, Timothy Snyder, who also has. You can look him up on YouTube. He's got a popular YouTube series explaining the history of Ukraine, sort of a series of lectures and cultures. Lectures on Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian history, and the name of that series is the Making of Modern Ukraine. Which I think might also be the title of his book. But you can start. I would start by watching his series on YouTube, and you can find all the information from there. Timothy Snyder, professor at Yale University.
Yeah, another listener emailed us about that and mentioned a book by him called Bloodlands: Europe Between Hitler and Stalin. And that apparently was published some years ago. The person who sent this email also mentioned a book back in 2008 about a man who fell in love with the Ukrainian people over 100 years ago. The man was the Archduke Wilhelm of Austria, who wanted to make Ukraine a crown land of the Austrian Empire. The title of that book was The Red Prince. You know about that one?
A little bit, yeah. So because Western Ukraine, the region called Galicia, was its own kingdom. The city of Lviv was founded by the Galician king Danilo about 1,000 years ago. But then over time, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, based in Vienna and Budapest, eventually conquered these lands, including the mountains from which I speak to you now. But one of the descendants of the would have been the emperor, the Austro-Hungarian emperor, was dispatched to Ukraine, to what is now Ukraine, to Galicia, to Lviv. And he so much fell in love with the local culture that instead of sort of conquering them, he became one of them. He adopted the same clothes they wear, their language. And so he became actually a hero in these lands. And Timothy Snyder calls these the Bloodlands because, from this area has been attacked so often from the east, going back to the Mongols and the Russians, and from the west, including the Nazis, and also back to the days of empire in the Renaissance times. And so this has been a much contested area for many centuries.
I wonder, after our discussion today, if my old history teacher at Roosevelt High School is still around and hears this, if he can change my grade in the course book and lift it up a couple of notches. Always appreciate your history lessons, and thank you, as always, Joe, for bringing the war home to us.
Yeah, Bob, can I tell you one quick piece of news?
Sure.
I do. I have person-to-person confirmation of a Russian citizen who was part of the Freedom for Russia Legion. That he did go to he and his comrades went to the border post on the edge of Kharkiv and Russia, and the border post was empty, and these soldiers just marched right through. Russia's claiming that most of them were killed or pushed back, but the evidence is scant for that. But I at least have personal verification. Someone I know knows someone who was there, and I saw the video.
Wow. You will probably be hearing about that on the news later on. Thank you for that, Joseph, and you will connect tomorrow with Wendy Snyder. Have a good day.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?